A lot of our students go barefoot through very extreme conditions. A lot of people are surprised, especially our high school students who will be barefooting through the winter around here. A study in Japan, and they were finding this strange syndrome that a lot of people were having. And it involved like tightness in your muscles, a lot of stress, insomnia, but fatigue. And they were trying to figure out what it was. And they finally realized there was this syndrome that was happening for people where they were in urban settings, they were around big metal buildings, they weren't getting outside, and they were getting sick. And they started to develop acupuncture protocols for how to treat this, and they were treating different points. And finally, somebody just said, let's take these people to the country and see what happens. So they took them out to the countryside, they had them walk around barefoot every day. It wasn't all day, it was only for like an hour, and they all got better.
Hey everyone, it's Mike Mutzel here with highintensityhealth.com. Thanks so much for tuning back in to episode number 110. And today we're live with Nate Summers. He's a program director at the Wilderness Awareness School, which is a fantastic school here in the Northwest where they help adults and children alike reconnect with nature and learn all about nature survival techniques and strategies. And one of his past students was featured on Naked and Afraid, which I don't watch TV, Nate, so I assume that's a popular TV show. I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it. So thanks for coming on the program. And if you could kind of maybe start off with how you got into this and what your current role is as a program director.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the show, first of all, and we're really glad to be here. And yeah, my background is when I was a teenager, I had some pretty extraordinary and fascinating experiences out in nature. I got to go to a full immersion archaeology anthropology camp when I was 13, and it was a Stone Age immersion camp. And so we lived outside in cattail mat huts that people had built. We learned to break rocks with our hands and make stone tools. We ran up hills and played sneaking games in full natural camouflage we had made, and it was just this really enlivening experience I had as a teenager. And I found this deep connection to nature that I didn't have before and that I didn't see in a lot of my peers. And so I kept doing that as a high school student. And then eventually I went on to college and, explored anthropology as my degree. And so I have a background in cultural anthropology and found that there was a lot of amazing studies going on of hunter-gatherer cultures and things like that, but not a lot of people doing and living it. And so when I got done with school, I got into outdoor education, environmental education, and soon found Wilderness Awareness School, which really specializes in that more primordial, deep nature connection, learning about plants, learning about animals, getting dirty, being off trail. And I love it. I've been a field instructor with the school for years. I've worked with youth. I've been in our core adult program as one of our main instructors for many years, called the Anake Outdoor School. And now I'm in more of a leadership role at the school as a program director. But my passions are natural health, natural supplements, helping people feel wild and free in their life, and kind of, I guess, working against the challenges of the modern living style by offering alternatives to that through being outside in nature and eating good, healthy, wild, natural foods, and having a healthy, vital body.
Mm-hmm. It's so needed, Nate. And what's pretty exciting is there's a lot of research, at least stemming from Japan, looking at the benefits of nature therapy, the Shinrin Roku and forest bathing and grounding and all that, which is pretty exciting that we can now kind of apply Western science methodologies and quantify some of the health benefits that we all, those of us that have experienced, just being in nature empirically have noticed. So a lot of our listeners, adhere to a paleo diet, right? Eating less lectins and getting rid of the grains and allergens and so forth, but still have health issues, whether it's autoimmunity or allergies and so forth, and are constantly battling through that. How much is the environment and maybe lack of nature and exposure, in your opinion, contributing possibly to the health problems that many experience today?
Oh yeah, that's a really great question, and I think we can't even know for sure. I mean, but I think that it's a huge contribution. That I mean, a lot of my coworkers and our students, we adhere to a paleo diet, but we also kind of want to expand it to like a paleo lifestyle. Like you can eat the best diet, with the highest protein and grass-fed beef, but if you're spending most of your time inside, in front of computer screens, underneath fluorescent lights, and you're wearing, really uncomfortable clothing and you're just sitting for 8 hours a day, and then you get in a car and you drive home and you don't breathe fresh air the whole time, I don't think you're going to be that healthy, no matter what supplements you take. We kind of joke that the first supplement you should take every day is nature, or outside time, and time being barefoot and stuff like that. And I imagine, it's great you mentioned the research that's coming out of Japan, and I think in the U.S. we're just starting to have some of that the same research being done on how nature affects our brain, how it affects our stress levels, how it affects our hormones, how it affects our biochemistry. And there's stunning stuff coming out that, for those of us who get to work outside a lot, it's not a surprise, but, how it helps people be more healthy, more happy, more calm. And I think a lot of times challenges with the immune system, autoimmune diseases, these are probably stem from lack of exposure to dirt and natural germs outside that, a lot of us grew up with when we spent more time outside. So,
yeah, very important. I love that paleo lifestyle. I think that's a great way to put it, and something that we should all strive for. Now, let's talk about maybe some recommendations, for people that say live in a city, right? An area where they maybe have to drive on the weekends to go camp or to go hike. Like in your estimation, in your opinion, working in this kind of business for the last 18 years, what's the ideal amount of time that folks should spend outside?
Oh, that is such a great question. All of your questions are good so far. I think it's really tough to pin down for people. I think that everybody should be trying to shoot for 30 minutes outside every day, of fresh air and sunlight and exposure. So, if you're in a city and, you have to commute, and I live near Seattle, and there's a lot of the people who come to our classes are from Seattle. I understand how this can be challenging. I've got a 60-minute commute I'm going to have to go do later, But in most cities, there are places you can go outside. There are parks, there are trees, just even green grass, or going to the water, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, all these cities have places you can get to, a park, and just, walking around for a few minutes. And exercising outside too. If you exercise, if you run, if you do push-ups, sit-ups, a lot of us here are more into natural movement type of exercise. Hanging from a tree or swinging from a tree branch, even a little bit, I think is going to go a long way. Yeah. And then, so if you can get 30 minutes a day, I think you're doing a great start. And then, looking for on the weekends a couple hours, maybe each day if you can. And realize that, not all of that has to be in a deep forest with lots and lots of old growth trees, though that's great. Going to a boardwalk and walking near the ocean and breathing in the fresh air, or, sitting by a tree in a park, or going rollerblading, or, whatever your physical movement might be, trying to do it outside. I like to train, I'll take my kettlebells outside, I'll take my, and swing my kettlebells in the backyard rather than be inside,
That's perfect. Yeah, that's great. And a lot of that research that you mentioned and we kind of discussed a few moments ago, the Shinrin Roku and stuff, they've looked at just getting outdoors. They've compared the biochemistry of like the stress response and inflammatory cytokine signaling and all that. And there still is a reduction biochemically from just going in an urban park. So if you live in Manhattan, New York, or downtown Chicago, like you mentioned, or San Francisco, you still get the benefit, even if you're not, like you said, in an old growth forest. So that's pretty neat. So maybe let's talk about some of the health benefits that you've seen, maybe yourself, and then particularly, children and family members and veterans that go through your program. Maybe share with us some success stories or aha moments that you've seen over the years.
Oh yeah, well that's great. Well, one thing I can talk about is my daughter, who's 9, and she's 9 years old. She goes to Wilderness Swearing School 1 day a week. She goes to public school 4 days a week, and she gets outside a fair bit. And she lives in a house and all that kind of stuff. So somewhat of more of a typical suburban or urban kid, except for these experiences. And I think one of the things I can kind of testify is that she's only had antibiotics once in her life. And it was a serious cold or virus or whatever it wasn't. And I felt pretty good about that she got those. But, in general, we've been able to treat things through, herbs or medicines and just a lot of outside time. And her immune system seems to be pretty strong compared to a lot of the other kids because she's exposed to the outdoors more, in terms of, our students and things, there's many students who've come here and have gotten like a lot healthier just in their body from just moving more, and moving outside, just walking off trail, things like that. But I think especially we see at our school a lot of healing of deep emotional stress and challenges and issues from the exposure to nature. And it's almost like people are existing in a state of agitation and disruption of their nervous system that they're not even aware of. And so there's this high level kind of anxiety that's going on all the time. And when they get unplugged and they spend some time in nature, suddenly all that stuff comes off. And, whether it's a weekend program or it's a 9-month program or it's a 2-week program, it all just depends.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. I have a personal story along those lines. During my college years, I kind of felt a little lost, what am I going to do with my life? I was, studying biology, wanted to go to medical school, wasn't really sure, I got a bad grade in a biochemistry class and so forth. And so to kind of overcome negative emotions, I would use hiking as a remedy. I didn't know that it would any of the benefits that we're talking about now. I knew nothing about that. I just knew that I loved to hike and I felt better when I got back. So I would just go hiking as much as I could. And my mood was always significantly better for extended periods of times after. And then during hiking, I got all these creative thoughts. Like I would think of all these ideas and synthesize all these pathways and, put together ideas and concepts that I was learning about in school. It's really great. Like you said, you kind of wind down a little bit in that low level frequency of Wi-Fi and TV and deadlines and so forth kind of goes away when you're out in nature.
Yeah, there seems to be a natural spaciousness, and when that spaciousness happens, there is a level of relaxation and de-stressing that goes on. And then I think what you're referring to is even another beautiful side effect is an upswing in your creativity and your inspiration that can happen for people. And I find that myself from my work. I mean, even though I work at Wilderness Awareness School, I have an office job. I mean, I'm a program director. I'm in the office quite a bit. I do go in the field. I do teach some. I just went wolf tracking last week for 5 or 6 days. It was great. And I've been in the office yesterday and today and on the computer a lot. But, if I can go for a walk in the morning before I come to work, if I can take a little walk at lunchtime, my productivity and my imagination and creativity stay up, as opposed to if I just stay in the office all day, by 3 o'clock, I'm just kind of fading, and
right.
Go outside, get just 5 minutes of fresh air. It can be great. So
yeah, that's amazing. So let's take it to the next level. And so for people that are convinced that nature's good for them and they want to maybe learn a little bit more about nature and get more prepared for, like you said, wolf tracking or maybe a natural disaster, what have you, what are some of the things that you teach people in your program?
Yeah, well, we have programs for people of all ages, and we do have some really great basic survival classes. We just ran one of my favorite classes. It's a 48-hour survival basics class that I think everybody should know. I mean, it's the kind of thing where my friend Dan teaches it. I come out and help teach it some, and it's just the stuff that everybody should know if they go backpacking or hiking or to help prepare for a natural disaster kind of situation. But our programs also are pretty broad. We have classes on edible and medicinal plants. We have classes that teach about birds and bird language. We do have the wolf tracking program I just did last week. And then we have, more hardcore survival experiences. We have a great experience. It ran this year, it was full, sometimes hard to get into, but we call it our Walkabout. And basically you show up and 2 instructors take you and 10 other students, and you just go with just a minimal gear on your back. And you go out into the wilderness for 6 days, and you just live off the land and just a little bit of stuff you've brought with you. And so there's a lot of amazing things we do. And again, a lot of it is the transformational aspect of it. People get a lot of skills out of it. They get these knowledge bundles, but it's the emotional change and development and excitement and aliveness that happens to them through the programs that I think are the most important.
That sounds awesome. Now let's talk about eating off the land. You had a blog post on eating wild herbs and foods and so forth, and kind of some of the benefits and all that. So what are some things that maybe people can grow and or if they are out in nature that you suggest they might try eating?
Oh, yeah. This is one of my personal areas of passion and excitement. And, I think everybody in the summertime should try to look for wild berries. There's so many wild berries that are easy to identify and that you can get, like around here, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. I just ate some wild raspberries up in the mountains this last week. And, there's not a lot of poisonous lookalikes, especially for those, the raspberries and blackberries. They're very safe. That the rubus genus of plants, that they're safe to learn and find. And yes, I mean, I love buying fresh blueberries at the store. I have blueberries in my backyard, that I grow. Growing berries is great. But, my partner, she gathered all these wild blueberries from the mountains when she was backpacking a couple weeks ago, and she brought them home. And they were exquisite. They were so much more full of flavor and nutrients and vitality. So I think berries is great. Another thing that people can look at that's pretty simple is some wild greens. And this time of year, we're getting a little bit later in the year now, and there's not as much of those. But nettles is a really easy plant for most people to identify. You can gather it in quantity, store it, dry it, freeze it. You can make pesto out of it. And it's basically a superfood. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the fact that we can get all these exotic greens from all over the world, but I think nettles have as much, nutrients and vitamins and minerals as any of that stuff, and it grows everywhere. So nettles is another great one. And then the third thing is, as we're going into the fall, you'd be surprised at how many apple trees and nut trees there are that are either naturalized or people are growing in their yards, and they just don't gather the fruit. And it's pretty easy to gather them up, eat them, dehydrate them, store the nuts, store the apples, whatever it might be, pears, things like that. If you're in an urban area, try getting out of the city for a weekend and just get some local apples or pears or something. I think that's another easy way people can engage. And I'm a big fan of people trying to grow what they can in their backyard with minimal effort, because gardening can be its own project and stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome, Nate. I'm excited about the greens that you mentioned. I think I saw on your website, it was Mwanza greens and dandelion greens and some other mustard greens, which are pretty fantastic. Talked about eating dirt. So have you looked at gut microbes and being out in nature and playing in dirt, and possible, microbial symbiosis or anything along those lines that we should share?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard over the years from a lot of students, a lot of people who've come through here, people with different backgrounds, that, one of the big challenges we're facing is, with antibiotics that we grow up with, antibiotics in our food, antibiotics that are given to us, that, gut health is a big deal. And one of the amazing ways that you can, restore that is by eating just food that's, grown in your backyard. And one of the most amazing things that studies that I've heard is that just digging in the dirt actually releases, healthy, happy chemicals into your body, and that actually can help benefit, those kind of challenges. But especially if you're going to grow carrots, or you're going to grow berries, or you're going to grow apples from your backyard, and you should wash them. I mean, like a little bit, but you don't have to bleach them, and then eating that and allowing that those natural flora to return to your intestines, I think is something we can all benefit from, Yeah.
I agree 100%. So this is actually my second podcast in our new home outside of Kirkland. We're in between Kirkland and Redmond, and we have 13,000 square feet on the piece of land. So that we wanted something where we could have a garden. So in the last few days, I've been out in the backyard, Nate, digging up. We have 4x8 beds, and man, it's been a blast. I remember as a kid, like for punishment, would be like, go redo that fence post and with the post digger and stuff like that. But it's been really fun to actually do that for myself and my family. And my 3-year-old daughter's been out there. We've been getting dirty every day, and we feel fantastic. It's really awesome. And the amount of energy she has. So again, I'm not a pro gardener here at all. I'm not trying to pretend to be that way, but just my limited early experience has been absolutely fantastic. So I'd recommend people get started, even though it's kind of late in the season now when people will watch this. So for people that are new to gardening, and want to experience nature, maybe in their apartment deck, for example, or on the roof of a condo or in a community garden, what sort of vegetables in your experience are kind of the most foolproof, kind of easy to grow and for a rookie?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what I would turn to is the simple like chard and kale and these incredibly nutrient dense greens that are all mold proof. Even if you don't have a green thumb, you can grow them. You can grow them in a pot on your backyard. A friend of mine did that just this year. She got some starts and she put them in pots on her back. She just back on her deck. She lived in an apartment. She didn't have a garden per se. I think that's a great place to start. Culinary herbs, your basils, your oreganos, rosemary, and thyme, things like, growing a little micro garden of culinary herbs is another great thing that can be done in an urban setting or if you don't have a lot of space. If you have a little bit more space, things like potatoes are really great to grow. Potatoes are so easy. You just kind of, chop them up and throw them out there, and then they produce lots more potatoes. So if you're looking for a starchy vegetable, that's another one that's relatively easy, or I've had some success with. Beets tend to go pretty well as well. When you get into carrots and some things like that, they can be more finicky. My friend Warren, who's the executive director of this school, is a fantastic gardener, and he can grow anything in his backyard. He's amazing. Yeah. But what I like to grow too is, I have blueberries and raspberries, and even though they're not vegetables, they just, you water them a little bit, even in this summer, and they take care of themselves. And the raspberries just spread and spread and spread. And so it's almost more of what they talk about in permaculture as a food forest, that there's just a area that's providing food for you. So
that's awesome. And you mentioned a lot of foods that are important to, get organic and grow your own, like raspberries. I'm sure you've seen how raspberries are grown in conventional terms. I think they have this plastic cover, and they just drop the seeds in there and they aerate them with bromide gas, and they're pretty toxic. And so beets, I know, are another one. So, and there was something recently, I don't know if you saw that, Nate, about kale, how it really kind of has a propensity to absorb thallium and different heavy metals. Did you see that?
I had not heard about that, but I mean, that's not surprising. And I do think it's important that, when you're growing vegetables in your yard or a community garden or whatever, to know about the soil history, right, of where you're growing things. And if you're gathering wild foods too, that it's something you should at least check into,
Absolutely. That's great information. So any closing remarks before we go to final question, Nate, on nature tips for parents, any aha moments for kids, anything we didn't get to talk about?
Well, I think that one of the things we try to have people do here at our school is follow their passions. So like if you are really into swimming, like go swimming outside and play around the water and be outside the water. If you really like trees or you're really into wood, go spend some time with the trees and learn about how to make fire, and make a bow or something like that. If you're really into rocks, like maybe, going to the beach and learning about the different kind of rocks and, which ones can make stone tools. So this idea of following where your passions are, I think is one of the final things I would leave people with. And that's one of the core things in our program. We have a set curriculum and we teach people within that curriculum, but we really encourage them to follow what they're really excited about. So for me, maybe that's natural movement and wild plants and wild medicines. But for somebody else, maybe it's, trees and tree climbing and swinging from trees. And somebody else, it's running barefoot, and I think that all of these things are things that connect us to nature and end up making us happier and healthier and more balanced.
That's fantastic. There's a lot of research showing that if you focus on what you're good at, you're going to build better skill sets around that. So fantastic tips, Nate. Now, one thing that we've done as a family when we go hiking is walk around barefoot. Any research that you've looked at or people you've spoken with over the years in terms of grounding and some of the benefits you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious you bring this up because, recently we've been hanging out, Wilderness Marine School's been hanging out with Mick Dodge, and he's, pretty famous guy now on TV and stuff. He's going to come back and teach again in the fall for us. He did some programs last spring, and he's a big barefoot advocate, and we're big barefoot advocates here. And, there is this amazing book out there that I think is called Earthing that talks about how there's just this amazing thing that happens when your feet touch the ground or your skin touches the ground and how it's healing for your whole body. And it is based on modern research. And I find some barefoot time at least every day for a while is essential, on the earth. And a lot of our students go barefoot through very extreme conditions. A lot of people are surprised, especially our high school students who will be barefooting through the winter around here. I encourage people to protect their feet, but I found this. I have the best story about this. Is that many years ago, in my explorations of natural health, and I know a fair amount about Chinese medicine and Japanese medicine. They did a study in Japan, and they were finding this strange syndrome that a lot of people were having, and it involved like tightness in your muscles, a lot of stress, insomnia, but fatigue. And they were trying to figure out what it was, and they finally realized there was this syndrome that was happening for people where they were in urban settings, they were around big metal buildings, they weren't getting outside, and they were getting sick. And they started to develop acupuncture protocols for how to treat this, and they were treating different points. And finally, somebody just said, let's take these people to the country and see what happens. So they took them out to the countryside. They had them walk around barefoot every day. It wasn't all day. It was only for like an hour, and they all got better. So the stress, the insomnia, the muscle tension, the low energy all disappeared from just walking around barefoot. So, ever since I've heard that story, for me, it's something that's essential.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. But like you said, it gets tough, during the winter, particularly, we're not, here in Seattle, not as cold and so forth as maybe parts of the Midwest or the Northeast where it's snowy and stuff like that. And so we do see this kind of cyclical depression, sleep issue, maybe even flare-ups of different diseases. We know that heart disease tends to increase during the wintertime. So what tips would you offer for people that, do live in cold climates and maybe can't just run around, their backyard barefoot?
Right.
What do they do?
Yeah, I still recommend getting outside, and, there's other forms of protective footwear you can wear, like Mukluks or something like that don't have a rubber insulating sole that can provide that connection to the earth. And you know what? Walking outside for 5 minutes in the snow barefoot is not going to give you frostbite. Okay, sometimes it will, depending on the weather conditions. But we do some cold training around here in the wintertime when we get some snow, where we strip down to as minimal clothing and we rub snow on our body and just see how it feels, or cold water immersion in the winter. So, and people who've had to, as humans, we've lived for a really long time outside, and sometimes we had to toughen our bodies to those conditions. Yeah. On the flip side, another thing that I think that really helps people, it's kind of the opposite of what I was just talking about, is in the wintertime, spending some time around a fire. So here, in the Pacific Northwest, it can get cloudy, it can get dark, we can have low sunlight, you're not getting as much sunlight, but creating a fire in your fireplace or in your wood stove, or even an outdoor fire, and spending time around that light and heat and warmth from the wood, I think really helps with that too. So, that's a way to keep yourself comfortable in the wintertime, and then maybe push your edges around that snow and stuff.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great tip. I never, thought about that with the fire, but that makes a lot of sense. Now, I agree with you on the cold water immersions and getting, kind of in the snow and stuff like that. It's like an adaptive stress. Just like, resistance training, or walking up a hill, or meditating, all these different things that push you to the next level. There's a lot of benefits to cold therapy. And, for a lot of our listeners are into weight loss and fat loss. And there's actually epidemiological studies that show that people that live in cooler temperatures generally weigh less. So there's a huge correlation there. And so there's nothing wrong with, like you said, getting 5 minutes of maybe even a deep chill and activating that brown fat. There's all this new research on brown fat. So I think that's a great tip. My brothers and I, just for fun on New Year's Eve, were like sledding down a hill with just our shorts on, snowy hill. And it was really cool just feeling the snow. And it's almost sometimes depending upon how cold it is and the moisture level is like really sharp, it's kind of cool feeling on your skin.
Yeah, I think there's some really amazing research from Russia around that stuff with immune system, and a lot of interesting things they've done with their special forces training, around cold water immersion baths every day to keep their soldiers really healthy and their immune system's really strong, and if maybe if you don't want to go out in the cold, or that's too much of an edge, I recommend for a lot of people in the winter time, you don't even have to do it in the summer and spring, but just turn that shower to cold before you get out, and see what happens. And what that does to our metabolism in terms of strengthening it and making us burn fat. I think there's a lot of great research around that'll come out too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just as an aside, there was an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger back in, I think it was on the Tim Ferriss show, and he would, growing up, always took cold showers. Tony Robbins, for example, a huge, business coach and personal development coach, has homes, strategically purchases he has multiple homes. I mean, he's a very wealthy guy near cold rivers. So that one of his first things that he does in the morning is jump in a cold river, like in Colorado. Yeah. So there's a lot of benefits there for waking up the immune system, waking up the neurological system, activating mitochondria. I mean, so many benefits. And it's certainly uncomfortable, just like sprinting or squatting, or like you mentioned, kettlebells, Nate, can be a little uncomfortable, burning your muscles, but it's going to push you to that next level and provide that stimulatory response that our body needs to grow and evolve and be better. So, yeah. Great tips there, Nate. So we know that you're really connected with nature. You've been doing this for 18 years. You're running you're the program director here. We want to know what your morning routine is. So share with us what the first 2 hours of your day generally looks like.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, that's thank you for asking, and I'm a little flattered. I usually come downstairs, and one of the first things I do is I have a cup of warm or hot water of some sort, and I may put some things in there, maybe some cardamom or ginger or something like that, as something to kind of warm up the digestion. And I do spend a few minutes just trying to have a few moments of gratitude and just thankfulness for the day, and just looking out the window, connecting to nature. And most days I'm fortunate enough that I get to go outside and do some sort of exercise before I have to go to work. And I often start the morning with Tai Chi or Bagua or Qigong, something gentle, maybe just some loose joint loosening mobility kind of things, and can get to do that for a while. And then if it's the winter time, I'll definitely tend to have a warmer breakfast of some kind. And if it's the summertime or springtime, I go for smoothies. And I'm a big fan of smoothies, especially with fresh berries. My smoothie this morning was raspberries and blueberries and some blackberries. And the blackberries were blackberries I gathered from my front yard. Some of the blueberries were frozen from earlier this summer. And the raspberries, I think, were organic raspberries I got at the store. And I'll mix in, some almond milk and some, protein powder, maybe some nettle, maybe some kale, something like that. So that'll be my breakfast. And then I drive to Duval, or if sometimes every once in a while I get to bike, but I come to where the office is. But I usually go for a walk, 15 or 20-minute walk before I actually come in the office. And, sometimes I'm checking my email before that, and I might have to do 20 or 30 minutes of email at home just to kind of, see what my priorities are going to be for the day. But I think that extra, 15, 20-minute walk before I set foot in the office is a real big, really important for me. And I think that's another thing I see a lot of people stressing about is not taking some time before they're at work, that you can really set your nervous system up for success by having that time easing into the day. And, on that 15 to 20-minute walk, it's not a power walk. I'm not going to burn calories. Like I'll do that later in the day. I'm just paying attention to the sunlight or the clouds or the birds or the plants. And, I've heard these amazing studies that are coming out now that just even seeing pictures of trees and plants relax our nervous system. So if I can get into that state before I get to the office, I generally have a great day. And, a lot of days, in the school year and stuff, I'll be up on the land and I'll be teaching all day. So maybe my routine will be a little bit different in the morning, but that's what I try to stick with.
Sure. That sounds like a great meditative walk. Now, is that you're outside of Duval? So assuming that walk is kind of in the woods, it's not on the roads. Is that what we're saying?
I go down to a little city park. It's called McCormick Park, and it's in town. It's near the river. It's, it's got some trees, but it's not a heavy forest. It's not old growth. It's just like a little river trail. It's an old converted railroad. It's basically like a greenway, which we have a lot of around here. I'm sure you have some in Kirkland, but now they're starting to put these in San Francisco and in LA and Chicago and Atlanta. That just realizing those greenways are so important for people's, health.
Totally. Yeah, there was one in Manhattan. I think it's a Highline Trail my wife and I walked on. It was great. There was trees and bushes and grass. I mean, it was, very nature-esque, and it's just right in Manhattan, so so many great areas. I think we're waking up and realizing that we were too far removed from nature for so long. So thanks for sharing your morning routine, Nate. Now, if there was one herb, nutrient, or botanical that you just couldn't live without, maybe you're going on a 7-day trip, what would that be and why?
Oh, this is a really tough question. So I'm going to go with a really simple one, and it might surprise people. And I'm going to suggest that for me personally, if I had to pick one thing, it would be some form of really high quality organic tea, probably a green, a black, or an oolong. And I think there's just so many benefits to tea, and a lot of the tea we drink in this country is not real high quality. So I would hope it would be a decent quality. The powdered stuff in bags from Lipton is not really what I'm talking about. But tea, it has benefits for the immune system, the nervous system, longevity, it's anti-cancer. And these are all things that have been studied in modern times and shown to benefit. And you don't need a ton of it. I don't drink coffee. I actually think coffee's a little intense for most people. I'm a little concerned about the health problems that coffee can cause for people, things like anxiety and high blood pressure and things like that. But tea would be what I would actually choose if I had to choose one thing. It's a nice thing to start your day with, or if in the middle of the afternoon, and it's just got a lot of great benefits for one single thing. So
yeah, that's fantastic. Now, if you could just pick one tea, or maybe your top 2 teas, is it white tea, green tea, black tea? I mean, there's so many.
There's a lot of good teas out there. I would say that I'm a really big fan of oolong teas. They're kind of halfway between a green and a black. The blacks I find a little too stimulating, a little too acidic. So the oolong teas are really good. And then there's really great teas from that are called First Flush Darjeeling teas that are kind of a green oolong mix that are really good too. Those are my favorites. They provide you a little bit of an uplift to help with the concentration, but they're not overstimulating at all.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's really easy to get into teas. I mean, if you go to a local co-op or even Whole Foods, they have the bulk section. Yeah. Some of them look pricey at first, like $47 a pound. My goodness, but you're getting ounces. So it's I've gotten my wife was like, "Are you kidding me?" It was like this organic green tea. Cold pressed, whatever. I can't remember which one it was exactly, but it appeared to be very expensive because it was 64 something a pound, but it turned out to be like $17 for this big bag that lasted 3 weeks. So don't get scared away with that. And then you just get a French press and pour it in there and pour a little cold water and steep it, and boom, you're off and running. So great.
Yeah, and people are starting to grow tea here in the States. They're starting to grow local teas. I mean, so you can get white tea and oolong tea from the Skagit Valley now here in the Northwest, which is great. No pesticides, and it's pretty amazing. So
yeah, keep it local. Great tip, Nate. So for a semi-final question here, if there was just one lifestyle or health tip that you could share with President Barack Obama, maybe a future president or someone from the World Health Organization, what would that lifestyle or health tip be, and why?
Well, this is a little bit of a challenging question because I think it has 2 parts for me. One part is that I think we do need to encourage people to get outside and experience nature, and that it helps them be healthier and happier and more vital, and that would have a lot of really positive social benefits for everybody, conflict reduction, health savings and things like that. But I think to go along with that, we have to have a society where those things are valued, and that we actually provide spaces for those people, for everybody to be able to go out and experience nature. I mean, I have worked with my fair share of kids from really intense urban settings, and it does not actually take them that long before they really feel comfortable in nature. It can take a few days, but their nervous system starts to calm down, something reawakens in them, they get really happy and healthy to learn and grow and change. And then they sometimes have to go back into very, very challenging environments where that kind of a thing is not available to them. And, my hope is that, people who have say in these things would be pushing us to create those kinds of spaces. And as we create more of those spaces, I think it has a lot of benefits that we're not even aware of. And we're not talking about everything has to be a alpine view or a cold, gorgeous river or the ocean. Urban gardens, urban green spaces, protecting the spaces we do have. And this doesn't just benefit us as humans. I mean, it benefits the whole planet. This is like kind of a no duh thing for me that, if we're not cutting down as many trees and we're planting more plants, that's removing carbon from the environment. If people are walking more, they're driving less. I mean, these kinds of things are, the more we can promote that kind of a lifestyle for ourselves and the planet, I think it's really beneficial. So that's what I would encourage the president to really engage with.
Yeah, I love how you distilled that very common sense and practical approach into that great soundbite there, Nate. And I think the time is now, because we're seeing such dramatic shifts in our climate and natural resources. We know that, petrochemicals and petroleum, there's only a finite amount of crude oil and all that to go around. So we really need to reconsider this, and then considering all the health problems that we're facing in the developed countries and so forth. It's a major, I think, imminent, concern. And I think the solution is pretty simple when you look at it. Eat more real food, spend more time in nature, sleep more, have better relationships. I mean, they're very practical things, So Nate Summers, Program Director at Wilderness Awareness School. Love chatting with you. I know our listeners are going to dig this. Where can they learn more about your work and what you do?
Yeah, well, we have a website. It's pretty simple. It's www.wildernessawareness, that's all one word, .org. And on our website, you can find out about our programs, our summer camp programs for kids. We have very, very successful summer camp programs. We have school year programs for kids, school year programs for adults. We even have some long distance correspondence courses for people who are in other parts of the country who want to learn about this. And we're part of a larger growing community of organizations and schools that do these things. And, you can look in your own local area and see what's going on there. There might be a nature school or a survival school of some kind there that you could connect with too. So.
Yeah, that's great. My next question was going to be, we have a lot of listeners in California, Texas, New York, and so forth. So is there like a master website where schools such as yours and organizations like yours would be listed under, or what sort of keywords would you suggest people should search for?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a master list yet. I mean, we've talked about trying to network that and pool that, and especially with some of our grads and the programs they're running. Nature connection, survival skills, survival schools are all things you can look up. Some of the places you've mentioned, I know there's some good schools in the Bay Area, Weaving Earth. John Young is doing a lot of great work down there with a group called the HShields.org. Down in Texas, my buddy Dave Scott has got an Earth Native school down there near Austin. So pretty much in every bioregion, every state, there's somebody doing something like this.
That's awesome.
And, we love the other work that people are doing on these things as well. So fantastic.
Well, Nate, really enjoyed chatting with you. Hope you have a great day and get some nature this afternoon.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.